Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset. Therefore, it must be the Story Corner, of course, right? Okay, good to have everybody here tonight. Let's see who we have in the chat room. We have, let's see. We have Ronald and Yehuda and Simcha and Regina and Dark Knight. I think that is Ethan. And we have Richard and we have Marshall. Good to have you all here, and more probably coming, and those who are watching in the background too. So, well, we have a good story tonight, as usual. Good to take a little break from all the mishagash happening out in the world, at least for a little bit of time. Okay. Our first story tonight is called From Shepherd Boy to King. On the desolate plain, a little shepherd boy stood alone. His day's work was over, and he wandered through the field and forest, listening to the twittering of the birds and the soft sound of the summer breezes as they gently swayed the branches of the trees. He seemed to understand what the birds were saying, and the murmuring of the brook that wound its way through the forest was like a message of nature to him. Sweet sounds were always in his ears. His heart was ever singing, for the shepherd boy was a poet. At times he would turn around sharply, thinking he had heard someone calling. One day he was quite startled. David, David, he thought he heard a voice calling, "Thou shalt be king of Israel." But he could see nothing except the trees and the flowers, and so he left the forest and stood in the desolate plain. In the distance he saw a very high hill, and as he approached near, he noticed on the summit a tall tree without branches or leaves. With great difficulty he climbed the hill. It was quite smooth and bare of vegetation and without rocks. And little David noticed that it gave forth none of those sweet sounds like music that came from the other hills. The summit gained, he looked at the tree in wonderment. It was not of wood, but of horn. "'Tis strange," said this boy. "This must be a magic mountain. No tree or flower or shrub can grow on this barren earth." He tried to dig a clod of earth out of the ground, but could not do so, even with his knife, for the ground was as hard as if it was covered with a tough hide. David was greatly puzzled, but being a boy of courage, he did not begin to run down the mountain. "I wonder what will happen if I stay here," he said, as he seated himself at the foot of the mysterious horn that grew at the summit and looked about him. Then he noticed a most peculiar thing. The ground was rising and falling in places as if moved by some power beneath. Listening intently, he also heard a curious rumbling noise and then a loud sounding swish. At the same time, he saw something rising from the other end of the mountain and whirl through the air. "That is just like a tail!" exclaimed David in surprise. The next minute, he had to cling with all his might to the horn, for the whole mountain was moving. It was rising, and soon David was quite near the clouds. The earth was a great distance away, and judging by a tremendous shadow cast by the sun, David could see that he was clinging to the horn of a gigantic animal. "I know what this is now," he said. "This is not a mountain, but a unicorn. The monster must have been lying asleep when I mistook it for a hill. That's some mistake, huh?" David began to puzzle his brain as to a means of getting down from his perilous perch. "I must wait," he said, "until the animal feeds. Then he will surely lower his head to the ground. Then I will slip off." But a new terror awaited him. The roar of a lion was heard in the distance, and David found that he could understand it. "Bow to me, for I am king of the beasts," the lion roared. The lion, however, was so small compared to the unicorn that David could scarcely see it. The unicorn, as soon as it heard the command, began to lower its head. And soon David was able to slip to the ground. To his alarm, he found himself just in front of the lion. Not very good planning, huh? The king of the beasts stood before him with blazing eyes, lashing its sides with its tail. David lost not a moment. Drawing his knife from his belt, the brave boy advanced boldly toward the lion. Just then, a sound attracted the attention of both the boy and the beast. It was a deer. "I will save thee, boy," it cried. "Mount my back and trust to my speed." Before the lion could recover from its surprise, David had sprung onto the back of the deer, which started to run at lightning speed. David clung tightly to its back. Behind him, a fierce roar indicated that the lion was in pursuit. Across the desolate plain and through the forest, the chase continued. And when David came within sight of human habitation again, the deer stopped. "Thou art safe now," said the deer. "Thou art to become king, and my command was to save thee. Fear not, I will lead the lion astray." David thanked the deer that had so gallantly saved his life, and as soon as he slid from its back, it dashed off again, faster than ever, with the lion still in pursuit. Soon, both were out of sight. David sang lightheartedly as he returned to his humble home, and years afterward, when he was king of Israel, he remembered his escape. He put the words of his song into one of his psalms. Which one do you think that is, huh? Okay. So this story is called The Magic Palace. Abraham, the most learned and pious man of the city, whom everybody held in esteem, fell on troubled days. To none did he speak of his sufferings, for he was proud and would have been compelled to refuse the help which he knew would have been offered him. His noble wife and 5 sons suffered in silence. But Abraham was sorely troubled when he saw their clothes wearing away to rags and their bodies wasting with hunger. One day, Abraham was seated in front of the holy book, but he saw not the words on its page. His eyes were dimmed with tears, and his thoughts were far away. He was daydreaming of a region where hunger and thirst and lack of clothes and shelter were unknown. He sighed heavily, and his wife heard. "My dear husband," she said to him gently, "we are starving. You must go forth to seek work for the sake of our 5 sons." "Yes, yes," he replied sadly, "and for you too, my devoted wife, but—" and he pointed to his tattered garments. "How can I go out in these? Who will employ a man so miserably clad?" "I will ask our kind neighbors to lend you some raiment," said his wife. And although he made some demur at first, she did so and was successful in obtaining the loan of a cloak which completely covered Abraham and restored him his dignified appearance. His good wife cheered him with brave words. He took his staff and set out with head erect and his heart filled with great hope. All people saluted the learned Abraham, for it was not often he was seen abroad in the busy streets of the city. He returned their greetings with kindly smiles, but halted not his walk. He had no wish to make any claims upon his fellow citizens, who would, no doubt, have gladly assisted him. He desired to go among strangers and work so that he should not be beholden to anyone. So, beyond the city gates, there were palm trees grew, and the camels trudged lazily toward the distant desert. He was suddenly accosted by a stranger dressed as an Arab. "O learned and holy man of the city," he said in Hebrew, "command me, for I am thy slave." At the same time, he made a low bow before Abraham. "My slave?" returned Abraham in surprise. "You mock me, stranger. I am wretchedly poor. I seek but the opportunity to sell myself, even as a slave, to any man who will provide food and clothing for my wife and children." "Sell not thyself," said the Arab. "Offer me for sale instead. I am a marvelous builder. Behold these plans and models, specimens of my skill and handiwork. From beneath the folds of his ample robes, the man produced a scroll and a box and held them out to Abraham. The latter took them wonderingly. On the scroll were traced designs of stately buildings. Within the box was an exquisite model of a palace. A marvelous piece of work, perfect in detail and workmanship. Abraham examined it with great care. "I have never seen anything so beautiful," he admitted. "It is wrought and fashioned with exceedingly good taste. It is in itself a work of art. You must indeed be a wondrous craftsman. Whence do you come?" "What matters that?" replied the Arab. "I am thy slave. Is there not in this city some rich merchant or nobleman who needs the services of such talents as I possess? Seek him out and dispose of me to him. To thee he will give ear, to me he will not listen." Abraham pondered over this strange request for a while. "Agreed," he said at length. Together they returned to the city. There Abraham made inquiries in the bazaar, where the wealthy traders meet to discuss their affairs, and soon learned of a rich dealer in precious stones, a man of multitude of charitable deeds, who was anxious to erect an imposing residence. He called upon the jeweler. "Noble sir," he said, "I hear that it is in thy intention to erect a palace the like of which this city has not yet seen, and an edifice that will be an everlasting joy to its possessor, a delight to all who gaze upon it, and which will bring renown to this city." "That is so," said the merchant. "You have interpreted the desire of my heart as if you had read its secret. I would fain dedicate to the uses of the ruler of the city a palace that will shed luster unto his name." "It is well," returned Abraham. "I have brought thee an architect and builder of genius. Examine his plans and designs. If they please thee, as assuredly they will, purchase the man from me, for he is my slave." The jeweler could not understand the plans on the scroll, but on the model in the box he feasted his eyes for several minutes in speechless amazement. "It is indeed remarkable," he said at last. "I will give thee 38,000 gold pieces for thy slave, who must build for me just such a palace." Abraham immediately informed the Arab, who at once consented to perform the task. And then the pious man hastened home to his wife and children with the good news and the money, which made him rich for the rest of his life. To the Arab, the jeweler said, "Thou wilt regain thy liberty if thou wilt succeed in thy undertaking. Begin at once. I will forthwith engage the workmen." "No need, no workmen," said the Arab's singular reply. "Take me to the land whereupon I must build, and tomorrow thy palace shall be completed. Tomorrow? Even as I say, answered the Arab. The sun was setting in golden glory when they reached the ground, and pointing to the sky, the Arab said, Tomorrow, when the great orb of light rises above the distant hills, its rays will strike the towers and domes and of this palace, noble sir. Leave me now, I must pray. In perfect bewilderment, the merchant left the stranger. From a distance, he watched the man devoutly praying. He had made up his mind to watch all the night, but when the moon rose, deep sleep overcame him, and he dreamed. He dreamed that he saw myriads of men swarming about strange machines and scaffolding, which grew higher and higher, hiding a vast structure. Abraham dreamed too, but in his vision one figure, that of the Arab, stood out above all other things. Abraham scanned the features of the stranger closely. He followed, as it were, the man's every movement. He noticed how all the workmen, and particularly the supervisors, did the stranger great honor, showing him the deference due to one of the highest position. And with grave and dignified mien, the Arab responded kindly. From the heavens a bright light shone upon the scene, the radiance being softened wherever the Arab stood. In his dream, it so appeared to Abraham. He rose from his bed, went out into the night, and approached the place magically rising from the waste ground beyond the city. Nearer and nearer his footsteps took him until he stood beside the Arab again. One of the chief workmen approached and addressed the stranger by name. Then it was Abraham understood, and he awoke. The sun was streaming through the lattice of his bedroom. He sprang from his bed and looked out upon a magnificent spectacle. Beyond the city, the sun's rays were reflected by a dazzling array of gilded cupolas and glittering spires, the towers of the palace of marble that he had seen built in his dream. Instantly, he went out and made haste to the place to assure himself that his dream was really over. Abraham and the jeweler arrived before the gates at the same moment. They stood speechless with amazement and admiration before the model of the Arab grown to immense proportions. Almost at the same moment, the gates, ornated with beaten gold, opened from within. The Arab stood before them. Abraham bent low his head. The Arab addressed the merchant. "Have I fulfilled my promise and earned my freedom?" he asked. "Verily thou hast," answered the merchant. "Then farewell, and may blessings rest on thee and the good Abraham and on all your works." Thus spoke the Arab, raising his hands in benediction. Then he disappeared within the golden doors. The jeweler and Abraham quickly followed, but though they hastened to The halls and the corridors of many colored marbles, in and out of rooms lit by windows of clearest crystal, and up and down staircases of burnished metal. They could find no one. Emerging into the open again, they saw a huge crowd standing in wonderment before the gates. "Tell me," said the jeweler, "who was the builder of this magic palace?" "Elijah the prophet," said Abraham, "the benefactor of mankind, who revisits the earth to assist in their distress those deemed worthy. Blessed am I, and blessed art thou for thy good deeds, for we have been truly honored." To show his gratitude, the merchant gave a banquet in his palace to all the people in the city, and scattered gold and silver pieces among the crowds that thronged the streets. And that took care of that real quick. Okay. So we are at our halfway point, and we are going to take a break. And when we come back, we have a story, The Sleep of 100 Years. So please, everyone stay tuned. We will be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Surprised? No, you weren't. You know I'd be back. Okay, let us get on with our next story. This one is called The Sleep of 100 Years. It was at the time of the destruction of the first temple. The cruel war had laid Jerusalem desolate, and terrible was the suffering of the people. Rabbi Onias, mounted on a camel, was sorrowfully making his way toward the unhappy city. He had traveled many days and was weak from lack of sleep and faint with hunger, yet he would not touch the basket of dates he had with him, nor would he drink from the water in the leather bottle attached to the saddle. Perchance, he said, I shall meet someone who needs them more than I. But everywhere the land was deserted. One day, nearing the end of the journey, he saw a man planting a carob tree at the foot of a hill. The Chaldeans, said the man, have destroyed my beautiful vineyards and all my crops, but I must sow and plant anew so that the land may live again. Onias passed sorrowfully on, and at the top of the hill he stopped. Before him lay Jerusalem, not the once beautiful city with its hundreds of domes and towers that caught the first rays of the sun each morning, but a vast heap of ruins and charred buildings. Onias threw himself on the ground and wept bitterly. No human being could he see, and the sun was setting over what looked like a city of the dead. "Woe, woe," he cried. "Zion, my beautiful Zion, is no more. Can it ever rise again? Not in 100 years can its glory be renewed." The sun sank lower as he continued to gaze upon the ruined city, and darkness gathered over the scene. Utterly exhausted, Onias lay his head upon his camel on the ground and fell into a deep sleep. The silver moon shone serenely through the night and paled when the dawn, and the sun cast its bright rays on the sleeping rabbi. Darkness spread out its mantle of night once more, and again the sun rose, and still Onias slept. Days passed into weeks, and weeks merged into months, and the months rolled on until years went by, but Rabbi Onias did not waken. Seeds blown by the wind or brought by birds dropped around him, took root, and grew into shrubs. And soon a thick hedge surrounded him and screened him from all who passed. A date had fallen from his basket, took root also, and in time there rose a beautiful palm tree which cast a shadow over the sleeping figure. And thus 100 years rolled by. Suddenly Onias moved, stretched himself, and yawned. That must have been a big yawn. Kind of like that. What do you think? "Strange," he muttered. Suddenly Onias moved. He stretched and yawned. He was awake again. He looked around, confused. "Strange," he muttered. "Did I fall asleep on a hill overlooking Jerusalem last night? How come it now that I am hemmed in by a thicket and am lying in the shade of this noble date palm?" With great difficulty he rose to his feet. "Oh, how my bones do ache," he cried. Yeah, I know that feeling well. Every morning, just like a bowl of Rice Krispies. Snap, crackle, pop. Okay, anyway. He cried, "I must have overslept myself. And what is my camel?" Puzzled, he put his hand to his beard and gave out a cry of anguish. "What is this? My beard is snow white." "What are you looking at?" "Oh, nothing. "And so long it almost reaches to the ground." He sank down again, but the mound on which he sat was but a heap of rubbish and collapsed under his weight. Beneath it were bones. Hastily clearing away the rubbish, he saw the skeleton of a camel. "This surely must be my camel," he said. "Can I have slept so long? The saddlebags have rotten too." But what is this? And he picked up the basket of dates and the water bottle. The dates and the water bottle were quite fresh. This must be some miracle, he said. This must be a sign for me to continue my journey. But alas, the Yerushalayim should be destroyed. He looked around and was more puzzled than ever. When he had fallen asleep, the hill had been bare of vegetation. Now it was covered with carob trees. I think I remember a man planting a carob tree yesterday, he said, but it was yesterday. He turned in the other direction and gave a cry of astonishment. The sun was shining on a noble city of glittering pinnacles and towers, and around were smiling fields and vineyards. Jerusalem still lives, he exclaimed. Of a truth have I been dreaming that it was all destroyed? Praise be to God that it was but a dream. With all speed he made his way across the plain to the city. People looked at him strangely and pointed him out to one another, and the children ran after him and called him names he did not understand. But he took no notice. Near the outskirts of the city he paused. Canst thou tell me, father, he said to an old man, which is the house of Onias the rabbi? 'Tis thy wit or thy lack of it that makes thee call me father, replied the man. I must be a child compared with thee. Others gathered around and stared hard at Onias. Didst thou speak of Rabbi Onias? Asked one. I know of one who says that was the name of his grandfather. I will bring him. He hastened away and soon returned with an aged man of about 80. Who art thou? Onias asked. Onias is my name, was the reply. I am called so in honor of my sainted grandfather, Rabbi Onias, who disappeared mysteriously 100 years ago, after the destruction of the first temple. 100 years, murmured Onias. Can I have slept so long? By thy appearance it would seem so, replied the other Onias. The temple has been rebuilt since then. Then it was not a dream, said the old man. They led him gently indoors, but everything was strange to him. The customs, the manners, the habits of the people, their dress, their talk was all different. And every time he spoke, they laughed. Thou seemest like a creature from another world, they said. Thou speakest only of things that have long passed away. Well, one day he called his grandson. Lead me, he said, to the place of my long sleep. Perchance I will sleep again. I am not of this world, my child. I am alone, a stranger here, and would fain leave thee. Taking the dates and the bottle of water, which still remained fresh, he made his way to where he had slept for 100 years, and there his prayer for peace was answered. He slept again, but not in this world will he be awakened. There's a nice story for you. Okay. So the next story is a little bit long. So we are going to conclude. What the heck? Three stories tonight. That's pretty good. So we're going to stop here, and we will put a bookmark on the book so we remember where we are. So don't forget, tomorrow night is the Rabbis Discuss, and they are going to go into the history of Hamas. Should be interesting. Then Wednesday night, at all times, or at 8 p.m. Eastern, Daylight Savings. Well, actually, it's end of Daylight Savings Time. Whatever. The time is different. And I still am not used to it. Anyway, so Wednesday is the Torah study, which is Chaya Sarah, the life of Sarah. And then Friday night at 8 p.m. is Kabbalat and Mariv, the Shabbat service. And then on Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. is Shachrit, the Musaf. And then right back here for more stories with me on Zeyde's Story Corner. Until the next time, my dear friends, we shall simply say, Laila Tov.